thank you all for coming along. We see we have a few members of our community in the public gallery, and thank you, councillors, for attending. I'd first like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Wadandi people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I declare the meeting is open. First, like to just mention that we are digitally recorded in accordance with Council Policy EMCP2, and to remind everybody that there's to be no visual or audio recording of this meeting or by any other means is allowed unless you have the permission by myself. We don't have any apologies, I believe, tonight. Full house. Do we have any applications for leave of absence? Yes. Councillor Massey? Thank you. That's for the September council meeting. Thank you for bringing that forward. Do we have a mover to accept that application? Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Newman. Is there anyone against that? Oh. No, we'll make that carried. Thank you. Are there any other applications for leave? No? Okay, moving on. We have item 3, which is the announcements from the presiding member. You'll see in the agenda that is basically my movements for this month. Has any councillor have any announcements they wish to make at the meeting? No? No? Okay, we're moving on to item 4, is the declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, we have one from Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith has declared a financial interest in item 9.2.3, which has to do with a minor boundary adjustment with the Shire of Donnybrook. Councillor Smith's business does work for one of the owners who's involved in that boundary adjustment, and as it's a financial interest, as Councillor Smith knows from the agenda briefing session, he will need to vacate the chair and hop out of the chamber for the duration of that item.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Moving on to item 5, which is 5.1, is our responses to previous public questions taken on notice. Are there any at that one? No. Moving on to public question time, 5.2. Do we have any questions from our public gallery this evening? Yes, please come on down and state your name and your address, please.
Bradley Fowler, 28 Thompson Street, Donnybrook. First question, has the council's finance department applied for the $3 million loan from WA Treasury Department?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Fowler. I'll refer that to the CEO.
I think that one's been referred on to me, Madam President. Thank you for the question, Mr. Fowler. No formal application for the $3 million loan has been lodged. And that is on the basis of the fact that the rates are changing in line with the Reserve Bank of Australia decisions. And also, until a contract or tenders are received, from my viewpoint, there's no real point in actually making application for a loan when the project itself has not been fully decided.
Thank you, Mr. Dolzadelli. Mr. Fowler, do you have another question?
I do. Just referring to March 2020, March 2022 meeting. It was on the 23rd of March, sorry, item 9.3.3. It was to do with the BC Mitchell Park precinct. In the recommendation, officer's recommendation, item number 10, that prior to issuing tender documents, the Shire President and the CEO, one, discuss a single-storey option with the President of the Football Club with a view to identifying a cheaper option which will permit more funding to other clubs. And two, of that same thing is to confirm with Troy Jones whether the final proposal selected is likely to meet with approval from the Department of Sport, Culture and Industries. What was the outcome of those two items?
Thank you, Mr Fowler. I can answer. The first one is regards to discussions with the Donnybrook Football Club for a single story. We have discussed that with the football club, and basically the decision that we made at the March council meeting was to investigate both options. So, and the next question was in regards to discussions with Troy Jones. Yes, we have discussed with Troy Jones, and Miss Ben, would you like to sort of
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, maybe just going back to the first item in relation to conversations with the football club. So the Shire President and I certainly had, I had two meetings. The Shire President and myself had one. The football club's preference is for a two-storey building. That preference hasn't changed in quite a while. The tender documentation that was developed called for different scenarios under a design and construct methodology, whether it could be a one-storey or a two-storey building. So that's, I suppose, the outcome of the conversations with the football club was to, I suppose, shandy the tender to include two different scenarios. With regards to advice from Troy Jones or from the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, yes, the Shire President and I had conversations with that department and that person, and the advice from the department is they're not concerned whether it's a one-storey or a two-storey building. It's more about delivering the community sport outcomes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Do we have any other questions from the... Yes, please come on down. Just need your name and address. Thank you.
Simon McInnes, Hardy Place, Donnybrook. Could you please explain how, according to the asset management plan that's in this meetings, the backlog of maintenance on the buildings within this shire has blown out by $100,000 to $250,000, and why this maintenance has not been done?
Thank you for your question. I might refer that to Mr Dolzadelli. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr McInnes, for your question. Certainly over this period of COVID, in terms of being able to get contractors to complete works has been difficult. So, you know, rather than, well, if we are not able to complete the work in a particular year, then we do reserve the funds in the asset management plan, so we don't just go, oh well, we didn't do it, so let's not forget it. Let's just forget about it. Certainly, I'm working on the the draft 2022-23 budget, and in that budget, in the capital works program currently in the draft format, all backlog and 22-23 asset management renewal is in. Now, the other thing that I'd like to explain is that an asset management plan is the ultimate. If money was no barrier, this is what we would do. But money is a barrier, and councils just can't continually increase rates just endlessly, let's say. So you will find from time to time that there will be something in an asset management plan that come budget, it doesn't make the budget. Because to be able to fund it may mean an extra 4% rate increase. So it is a balancing act. And essentially when you look at your budget and the asset management plan renewal numbers need to go in as renewal numbers into the long-term financial plan. We've spoken about the asset sustainability ratio in the past. So if we could do everything we wanted to, asset management plan, that's what we need to spend, okay? Budget says we can only spend this much. So that ratio of sustainability is calculated on that basis. So if we're only, for example, spending half of what the asset management plan says, we're at 50% sustainability ratio, in simple terms. Yeah, so I'm hoping that explains it for you, Mr. McGuinness.
Yeah, fine. At the March Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting, the current Finance Officer compared the levels of depreciation of the road networks of surrounding shires with the level of depreciation of the Donnybrook Road network and indicated that it was overvaluation of $2.5 million. However, when comparing the asset management plans of these shires, the surrounding shires have all roads individually listed with their levels of condition and maintenance. Our current management update for the Donnybrook's largest asset and largest maintenance bill does not, and it only runs to 3 pages, including an introduction. Disregarding the fact that the legislation was non-existent to arrive at this depreciation figure, how can depreciation be calculated when the current condition of the road asset is unknown and the previous condition of the road network is unpublished and unknown, and the current asset management plan involving roads is devoid of all meaningful information?
Thank you for your question. I think I'll pass it over to the Director of Corporate Community.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. McGuinness, for the question. Council actually has what's called a RAM system, a Road Asset Management System. Most councils, if not all councils in Western Australia, have got that system. Mm-hmm. It is a comprehensive list. It's probably not the right description of all road infrastructure assets, so drains, curbing, seal, gravel, road base, the whole lot. And it actually splits each road up into what are called SLKs, which are straight line kilometres. Okay. So certain sections of road, you might have a section that's gravel, a section that's bitumen, a section that's asphalt, some might be curbed. So that asset management system, and we use that to report to the WA Local Government Grants Commission to do our road returns, and effectively MRWA have access to our data as well, and they analyse that data. Now, in terms of, so that is our sort of very detailed listing. We certainly don't have that in our individual asset management plans. To a degree would be duplicating that data. But what I can tell you is that in the 22-23 financial year, and we've already engaged someone to do this, they were awarded a contract over a 2-year period, that they will be doing a comprehensive review of all our road infrastructure assets in as far as, you know, useful life left, condition reporting, the whole lot. So that will certainly put the Shire in a better or more better informed position to really comprehend and understand its full road network and road infrastructure network. So that will be done during the 22-23 year. In the current financial year, Land and Buildings has gone through that process. So certainly in the annual financial statements, you'll actually see quite a revaluation and effectively pretty much the valuations have all gone up on built assets. I don't know what will happen with the road infrastructure. I'm not well qualified in in that sphere. I understand the theory, understand how it works, but wouldn't like to say whether it's going to go up or down.
But will that information be released to the public?
Not at a detailed level, no.
What
No,
about
so
at an undetailed level?
yeah, certainly. Well, it'll form part of the actual annual financial statements in terms of the reporting, and it is broken down in those statements into the road infrastructure asset categories. So yeah, it certainly will be available in a public document. Yep.
The
Do-
RAMS thing is not on the website. I had a look.
No, certainly not on the website. It's actually something that each council nominates a number of officers who have access to that data. Nobody from the public nobody other than officers in the council and the WA Grants Commission and Main Roads WA actually can have access to that system.
Okay.
All right. Do you have many other questions,
I've got
Mr. McGuinness? Just before I
one,
just...
two, three, but I'll go and sit down if you want.
Yeah, I'll just check. Is there any other questions from any other councillors? Oh, any public members? And then you can pop back up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. King. Just remembered your name and address. Thank you.
Mike King, Balingup, Radiata Road, Balingup, if anybody knows where that is, but never mind. At numerous times in the past, particularly when there is an economic outlook which is recessionary and tightening, the question has arisen, has your average ratepayer got sufficient capacity to pay any rates increase which might be demanded by the council? In April 2019, for instance, as local governments were preparing their budgets, both Wolga and the Minister for Local Government recommended that council should determine and consider the capacity of their ratepayers to pay anticipated rate increases. Other comments at the time were that councils need to keep a lid on the costs. In preparing the coming budget
Yes, yep.
and
Got a question.
having in mind that we're headed towards 7% inflation, if you believe the RBA, that we've had 3 to 4% interest rates on housing, which will add thousands of dollars to people who own money on,
Yep. Is it
on housing.
your question?
Yeah, it's coming. Fuel up 30%, electricity up, and weekly cost of living up probably 50%. The question is, in preparing this coming budget, the budget that's coming towards us, has the council determined and considered the ratepayers' capacity to pay? I don't think they did last year, but I'm wondering whether they have this year.
Thank you for your question. Of course, the local government is not immune to all these inflationary costs as well. So, look, at the moment we're preparing the budget and long-term financial plan. You answered your question is, have we considered the people or community members? Absolutely. We consider community, we look at long-term, like what's sustainable for the community, and all sorts of things. And we've just talked about asset management and the importance of maintaining our assets, so it actually has the longevity. So unless the CEO's got anything else to add to that, yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. King. Earlier this year, I think it was either the March or the April council meeting, council deliberated on a set of assumptions to underpin the draft budget. There was probably 10 to 15 sets of assumptions around CPI, the wage price index, the local government cost index, cost of oils and fuels and things like that. And as the Shire President mentioned, local governments as a sector are not immune to a lot of these implications. And from my perspective, I'm quite cognizant of the local governments as a sector obligation to try and minimise cost shifting basically onto community members. I can't speak on behalf of elected members, but I'm I'm sure they're all in the same position. Earlier this month, or might have been in May, we had a concept forum and a bit of a training session with regards to the budget. Local government budgeting is a bit of a complex beast, and as you'll appreciate, we've got some newer elected members around the table, so we're going through that process. We're very close to having a draft budget prepared at an internal level, and we'll be in the process, as you will recall, quite fondly and vividly, I'm sure, sitting around the council table, going through budget workshops line by line over many, many hours and days. That process is due to come to us very, very shortly, and I'm sure front of mind will be CPI at 7.6%, fuel prices going through the roof, and other cost pressures. One interesting note, just a little bit aside, and it has less to do with cash flow, community cash flow, but more to do with asset value. We've had revaluations for our unimproved value properties, so unimproved value properties, for those of you who are not familiar, are essentially mostly farming properties. We're not due for a GRV revaluation this year. That's coming in a couple of years. And the UV valuations have gone up markedly, 10 to 15%. So whilst cash flow is a bit of a challenge, and I acknowledge and accept that, asset values through the Shire are increasing exponentially at the moment.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
I've got a statement. This is not the time for the Donnybrook Balingup Shire.
This is question time. Do we have any other questions from the public gallery before Mr. McGuinness? Okay.
Got two questions. First question is, on Saturday night, down at Park Donnybrook, the display cabinets that displayed all the memorabilia from the Historical Society were left outside. Today, the display cabinets were empty and been taken away from the park. Could you please explain what's happened to the historical displays?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Fowler. I'll pass that over to the CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Fowler. I understand the cabinets are still there, but the artefacts have been taken away. I also noticed that this morning. I understand Saturday night, at the end of trade on Saturday, the proprietors of the venue simply forgot to move the display boxes back inside the building. It's human error, it's an accident, and I've received an apology from the operators and an undertaking that they'll improve their systems and processes. I have a log to call Mr. Dilly or someone from the Donnybrook Historical Society in regards to the removal of the artefacts, and I'm still to get to the bottom of that, but I understand it's the Historical Society that removed the artefacts.
Yep, thank you.
So they haven't been stolen.
Good.
Do you have another question?
The second question is quite a complicated question, and I'm quite happy to forward this question on to Mr. Dozzadelli via email, which may help him decipher it. The question relates to, and just a bit of the background to it, from recommendations made in Gender. There was a teleconference with the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. That was on the 19th of March 2021. And it was basically to advise the Shire that funding towards any early works package on the project, i.e. hockey training facility, would be removed from its overall funding co-contribution obligation. And essentially that's 2.6% of the anticipated 9% project. So $240,000 from the hockey pitch relocation, taken from reserves, which the reserves had $500,000 allocated from reserves, which would have left $260,000. And then we go on to the next one down here is that a further financial assistance agreement for $250,000 was approved by council to draw down on the funds for the design and tender documentation process. So those funds had been drawn down, so that reduced the state government funding down to $5.75 million. And then also the officers' comments showed that the hockey club, which is $250 for the early drawdown, so that's $490 drawn down. And then at the March 2022 council meeting, there was an additional $60,000 or potentially $60,000 drawdown as well. So my calculations is you're showing in the agendas that we still have $9.5 million budget, where in actual fact, if you take that expenditure away, we've got $8.95 million. So could you please explain what the budget amount left is?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, you're right, that there is a lot in that question.
I'm happy to pass that on.
Yeah, that might be advisable, I think. Thanks, thank you.
And
Are you happy with that,
happy to take
Mr
it on
Dolzardelli?
notice if-
Yeah, through you, Madam President, Mr Fowler, I could probably answer it better if I was to see the whole question.
Yeah.
I've got an answer, but I don't want to just flippantly answer it with a number.
Yeah.
I'd rather give you the background and speak to what you've spoken of,
Yeah.
and explain, the different machinations. But certainly, if we're able to have a copy of the questions,
Yeah, happy.
I'll quick smart get a written answer to you, and it will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting.
Yeah. Just in my calculations,
Yep.
we're $500,000 out somewhere. There's like, the figures don't match up by $500,000, so if we can sort that out, it'd be
Yep.
great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Madam
Okay.
President, I might be able to answer. If that's the crux of the question, at the council meeting earlier this year, council approved an additional $500,000 allocation to the project. So instead of $3 million, it's allocating 3.5.
No, that's
separate.
gone from 9 million to 9.5 million,
Yep.
but we've only got 8.95 million left. In my calculations, that's
okay.
what's left, so something not quite right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr McGuinness. Oh, hang on. Is there anyone else before Mr McGuinness comes up?
Okay, Simon McGuinness, Hardy Place. The depreciation calculation will directly affect the Shire's operating surplus ratio, which has had a significant adverse trend since 2015, which has been pointed out by the auditor in 2018 and 2021. Will these changes to the depreciation based on legislation that is currently in draft and yet to go through Parliament improve the ratio, and how will it impact upon the debt service cover ratio and the assets consumption ratio, which also all have depreciation elements? I'm starting to get my head around this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I do understand there are some changes. Mr Dolzardelli, would you like to enlighten us?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the question, Mr McGuinness. Look, the draft legislation that's out at the moment, essentially, to be quite honest, is, in terms of those ratios, is going to take it out of the audit report. Okay, so the auditor will not give an opinion on it. They will verify that it's been calculated correctly. So will the change itself actually change the ratio? No.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, sure.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr Dolzardelli and Mr McGuinness. Separately to the proposed changes to the financial management legislation. The Office of the Auditor General, the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries and WALGA are working on a review of how the ratios are calculated. And that's mooted for some time later this year or early next year. So in terms of how the ratios are calculated, depreciation, there's a whole lot happening in that space. We're not privy to what that is, but it's probably a watch this space for over the next 12 months or so.
Okay. The ratios, though, they do give you a good picture of the health and finances of the Shire at the moment, don't they?
Madam President?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's arguable, which is why they're reviewing how the ratios have been calculated.
Okay, well, I've still got one on ratios. The asset funding renewal ratio hasn't been calculated. All the information's been available since 22/12/20. I mentioned this at the March meeting and it was promised for the May meeting. Will we have this calculation by the end of this fiscal year?
Yes, I'll pass it over to Mr Dolzdelli. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr McGuinness, for your question. Look, my recollection is certainly different to yours. I can recall at the meeting when the question was initially asked that the response was that it couldn't be calculated due to the fact that the split between capital renewal expenditure and capital expansion or upgrade expenditure was not embedded in the long-term financial plan.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
So the long-term financial plan, and until we've got a new long-term financial plan that embeds that data in that way, we will be in a position which is still not being able to calculate the ratio. What I can tell you is that the asset management plans before council today actually do split the expenditure between upgrade, new and renewal, and those numbers have been split in that manner into the long-term financial plan. So once that long-term financial plan is adopted, then effectively we will be able to calculate the ratio, if indeed the ratio is still in place. The reality is that at the end of the current financial year, for the 21-22 financial year, the long-term financial plan which is being developed right now starts at 22-23. So come the end of the current financial year, we still will not be able to calculate that ratio.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Mr McGuinness. Are there any more, last chance, any more questions from the gallery? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you for all those questions. We're going to move on to, we've got item 6, which is to do with petitions, presentations and deputations. And we don't have any this evening. So we're going to move forward to our on block items. I'm just going to read out the on block items and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. The items that are going on block: 7.1, confirmation of minutes, ordinary council meeting 25th of May 2022. 9.2.2, monthly financial report, May 2022. 9.2.5, customer relationship management, progress update. 9.2.6, which is the adoption of the COVID-19 financial hardship policy. And we also have on block is the confidential item 12. That
needs to be done behind closed doors.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we're just going to move them, need a mover for the on block items, which are the 4 items in front of you. We have Councillor Atherton. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Smith? Don't wish to speak? No. Okay, is there anyone against? We're moving these on block? No. Okay, I'll declare them carried. So we're now going to move to our first item, which is Councillor Smith is got a conflict of interest. So Councillor Smith is just leaving the room. And this item is 9.2.3, joint submission to the Local Government Advisory Board to change the district boundary. This is by a simple majority. Now, do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Atherton, do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Councillor Atherton, do you wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Jones as a seconder. Okay. Do we have, or starters, do we have any questions? No. Do we have anyone against this motion? No. Thank you. I'll just like to, sorry, any closes? Would you like to close them? Okay, so I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Okay, we're going to go to our next item, which is 9.2.4, which is the annual review of the asset management plans 22-23. These would be the plans that Mr McGuinness was referring to earlier. Do I have a mover of this motion? Councillor Atherton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newman. Councillor Atherton, did you wish to speak? Councillor Newman, did you wish to speak? Yes, actually I've put an amendment in, so I can possibly move that now, put that now, because you've... So my amendment is, I'll explain the amendment first and then... So it's just to add point 3, which is to instruct the Chief Executive Officer to amend the timing of the deliverables in the Council Plan 22-32, Outcome 12, Objective 12.1.5 to align with the following documents. And the following documents, I actually have 4 documents here, but I actually wish to just use the 2 items which is referred to in point 1. So I was actually I was looking at the asset management plan and the borrowings plan that we're referring to in 1 to be aligned with what our council plan says. So so I move it. Do I have a seconded? And then I'll actually speak to it. Councillor Atherton is seconded. You're right there, Councillor Atherton? You're not falling asleep? Okay, great. All right, I'm just going to speak on this amendment. The reason why I actually put this in is I've been looking at the council plan and trying to align our ducks, basically, to see the flow of what we've said in the council plan flows into all the other informing strategies. And there was a little bit of a discrepancy in the alignment, so I'm just sort of requesting that the alignment be sort of like the council plan be aligned with the informing strategies. Now, the 12.1.5, I'll just explain, it's to do with the admin building. The admin building, you probably noticed in the borrowings there was $2 million in about 3 years' time. The council plan actually had the review of the admin building in 3 years' time, whereas if you actually look at the asset management, they had, like, we do the due diligence this year, next year we'll do the specifications and the design, and the third year we'll look at perhaps going out to tender and that sort of thing. So I just felt that we needed that aligned up with council plans, so we're sort of all on the same page. And which is probably fairly timely because we've had sort of discussions with the Donnybrook Historical Society who were sort of looking at sort of perhaps combining and being part of this development as well, potentially. So that's the crux of my amendment. So I'll pass it over to the seconder if you want to speak.
Yeah, I'll speak in support of it and thank the President for what I think is a very worthwhile amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atherton. Is there any questions on this before I sort of put it out to... No? Okay, is there anyone against this amendment? We're talking about the amendment. No? Okay, I will put that to the vote. Everyone in favour of the amendment? That's unanimous. Okay, so now we're moving this, the whole lot becomes a substantive motion now. So we've got 3 points, point 1, point 2, and of course the amendment, which is the 3. So we've actually had a mover or a seconder and they've spoken. Is there anyone against the whole motion that would like to speak, the substantive motion, against it? No? Okay, well I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour of the substantive motion, raise your hands. No, anyone against that? No? You're just shooing a fly, were you, Councillor Jones? Yep. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to the next item. Yeah. So it looks like we're closing the meeting to the public, so that ends the open session. So I'd like to firstly thank everyone for coming along, and thank you, Mr. Hayes, for coming along tonight, this evening. See you later, Mr. King. Enjoy your night. I would just like to, would someone like to move a motion to close the meeting? Councillor Newman has moved, seconded Councillor Goobler. Is there anyone against? No, I'll just carry it. Unanimous.